Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1971-74 carryover league draft, second round draft results. Wow, what a fun second round it has been. A lot of traditional baseball team stuff, a lot of random baseball stuff, surprise moves, some poachings, which is what you see in drafts generally. It's like you play your own little fantasy league draft and the guy picks before you, takes the player you want, that kind of stuff. But before we even get into the second round, we got some league business to do here. Toronto Blue Jays are the winners of the Commissioner Award from a year ago. For most efficient roster use, you take the innings pitched by the least used pitcher, multiply that number by at-bats by the least used hitter. That factor, whichever team has the greatest number, wins what is called the Commissioner Award, which is the 33rd pick in the draft. Between rounds 1 and 2, basically you forfeit your 8th round pick, and then you slide that 8th round pick all the way up here between picks 1 and 2. You try and find some tasty guy that slips through the cracks, probably the first guy in a particular category. And for the Toronto Blue Jays, they did a couple things of interest here. Their pick is Jerry Royce, a 1973 Jerry Royce. And he would pitch on 3 days rest with a 3.74 ERA. He's not amazing, he's very good. This is like a futures pick though, because he will get better in the middle and late parts of this decade when he's with the Pirates and the Dodgers. So if Toronto can either hold on to him or trade him later in the decade for more stuff. So it's a nice pick. Also, because you see this yellow here with a W, this is the first time a team looked on the waiver wire and found a guy. And Jerry Royce was the first player placed on waivers. He was placed on waivers by Milwaukee, who actually, a funny thing about Milwaukee, they didn't have a left-handed starter on their team, and yet they waived him. And that would, you'll see in this second round, factor into a draft day trade for a left-handed pitcher. So interesting move by Milwaukee to let this guy go. By the way, Jerry Royce had pitched for St. Louis and Houston without too much success before going to Pittsburgh and the Dodgers. He makes a perfect candidate for an expansion team like Toronto. Expansion teams love guys who move around. So that is the mezzanine pick before we get to the main course, and we go to the top of the second round, beginning again with the Philadelphia Phillies. Before I do this though, I got to show you one very important step I do in this draft, and that is in the year of 73, the second to the last year, the second to the end year, if a team has already selected 2 1973 players in round 1, meaning that they announced their first round pick, but they also said they're going to announce a second player for that year as their 6th round pick, it means that the rest of their minor league farm system becomes free agents. So what I do is, at the end of each of these rounds, when that happens, and this is alphabetically here, the free agents in 1973, starting in this row with Arizona alphabetically. I denote free agents for Baltimore because they added Jim Palmer and Bob Reynolds. Free agents here with Oakland because they did Sal Bando and Gene Tennis, so these guys become free agents. Portland's guys, Seattle's, San Francisco's, and St. Louis. Those guys are free agents because those teams announced their 1973 players. So, with that in mind, Philadelphia pounced, I say, pounced on a guy who suddenly became available when his protection ran out. And if you're wondering who it is, it came from the Giants and ends up with the Phillies, and we'll see here. With the Phillies, their 2nd round pick, a free agent that the Giants let slip through the cracks. Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Maddox goes to the Phillies, and all the Phillies had to do was ring the phone, and he's theirs. They get him for nothing. The Giants end up with nothing for Gary Maddox. Maddox hits .319. You know what the Giants did? They decided to go with an aging William McCovey and Ed Goodson, a third baseman. And they let Gary Maddox get away. which is pretty cool because I think the Giants did a lot of bonehead moves in the 1970s, as the Giants did nothing in the 70s, early 80s. They were terrible, and this sort of is a reflection of that. So Gary Maddox, and you're seeing Philadelphia after drafting Mike Schmidt. Gary Maddox from you can see the history coming forward. They're still too young. They don't have a logistical chance of beating the Mets or Braves in this division, but they got two guys with 620 or more plate appearances, Gary Maddox and Mike Schmidt. So Gary Maddox, 319, 810 OPS is the first pick in the second round for your Philadelphia Phillies. All right, next up, your Kansas City Royals. They had the rights to Marty Patton and Bob Oliver in the year of 72. They exercised those rights. Both guys do very well. Marty Patton can pitch on 3 days rest with a 3.24 ERA. Bob Oliver hits 20 home runs. His card has 20 home runs on it. The stat sheet says 19. Maybe he may have played for two teams. He may have gone from Kansas City to California that year. But anyway, he will be the designated hitter for Kansas City. And Marty Patton goes in the rotation. Nice moves there for the young Royals. Third, the Padres. They went to the future again. They took Johnny Grubb in 73. In 74, they found a couple young pitchers. They added Randy Jones a year ago. This year, they had 22-year-old Dave Freisleben and 28-year-old Ed Sprague, who they acquired out of the Milwaukee organization. Freisleben can pitch on 3 days rest with a 3.66 ERA. Ed Sprague, 2.39 ERA in 94 innings. Nice pitchers for the Padres. Okay, the New York Yankees. This is an interesting pick. And this is sort of like, I sort of looked closely at Baseball Reference and I said, okay. I just put my hands up in the air and I said, all right, whatever. Elliot Maddox, top 10 MVP votes in 1974. Top 10, 74 MVP votes. I mean, I kind of went through this with 72 Ed Brinkman as well. Top 10 MVP votes. And I kind of looked at Baseball Reference and showed who was in that list and why those names kind of stick out, but that's in a different video. So yeah, I took a top 10 MVP candidate for the New York Yankees in 74, Elliot Maddox. He is a 1 -3 E6, can play center field or right field with that defense. He can even play second or third for 5 minutes if you need him to. 303 hitter, not a lot of power. Some walks, a 395 on base, 781 OPS. But yeah, add him. He goes into center. That puts the 2, Bobby Mercer, in the right field. So great defense for the New York Yankees. Okay, the Expos. Oh yeah, we love what the Expos are doing. After Jorgensen and Murray in the round 1, which shook up the American League North, they got Kenny Singleton's best year in Montreal. 1973, 26-year-old Kenny Singleton hits 302, 904 OPS, 23 homers, 103 RBIs, and 123 walks. My goodness. Montreal, how can you trade him to the Baltimore Orioles? How can you do that? Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, Kenny Singleton's magnificent 73 year for Montreal. Oh, by the way, Bob Bailey. Probably one of the most underrated players of the 1970s. Always seems to do crazy crooked number stuff like this. 273 with 26 bombs, a 379 on base, 868 OPS. Not known for his glove, of course. Was a pinch hitter for the late part of the decade, but boy, he could rake. Bob Bailey could really hit the ball for the Expos. These are 4 excellent baseball players the Expos suddenly have. Look out, folks. They don't do anything until, what, 79, 80, 81? But maybe things are about to change for the Expos. They got 4 really good players here. All right. Next up, the Cubs. The Cubbies got a young guy. How about that? So after being the first team to draft a veteran in round 1, Billy Williams, they got some young kids. They took 74 Bill Madlock. They still have Ron Santo playing third base. Don't worry, Ron. They're going to make Bill Madlock a designated hitter. Something they could not have done in 1974. They didn't have a designated hitter in the National League. Well, they do now. So Bill Madlock's hitting 313, 815. Oh, by the way, you can make him a 354 hitter in 75 if you want. So great news for the Cubs. They also plucked a reliever out of Baltimore's everybody goes to Baltimore and steals their pitchers. And they found Don Hood, a nice lefty reliever with a 3.45 ERA, to complete the necessary three pitchers, left-handed pitchers for the Cubs. Nice pick there for the Cubs. Seattle, this is a great pick. This is a great pick. Remember, they don't have a farm system. They didn't exist back then. So they went and took Bill North away from Oakland in the first round. They found Danny Thompson, available, not protected by the Minnesota Twins in '72. And why is he sitting there? That's because the Minnesota Twins still have Chico Cardenas playing shortstop. Now, sadly, Danny Thompson tragically passes away in the 70s and is only plays for a few more years in baseball. But the good news is for Seattle, they get him now. They can extend his number of years in the league, carryover league rules. And for the Minnesota Twins, they'll eventually have Roy Smalley as a shortstop. So the Twins do very well themselves, going from Chico Cardenas to Danny Thompson to Roy Smalley. They also added Norm Miller, a corner outfielder who'll work in a platoon. He's got a 723 OPS. Norm Miller. Nothing flashy there. He's the 7th round pick. Announced now for Seattle. Portland. Oh, this was a fun pick for them. A glaring hole at first base. And then we have been banging on Tommy McCraw now for 3 years. As Tommy McCraw's perennially hitting 226 or 243 with no power. And been in the league. Banging on poor Tommy. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, he's been put on waivers by the Astros. In 1974, he's 33 years old. And suddenly Tommy puts up a 294, 784 OPS season and is split between lefties and righties. He hits lefties better than righties. He's a full-time first baseman, a 2E8. So how about that? Tommy McCraw finds a home in Portland to play first base after struggling with the stick prior to that. Next up, the Baltimore Orioles. All right, the Orioles. They decided to improve a very important player on their team in the early 70s. They had traded Davey Johnson a year ago, they traded Davey Johnson this past offseason. Bobby Grich was playing short while Johnson played second, no more. By improving Bobby Grich to a 74 card, he's a 1E20 second baseman with an 807 OPS, 90 walks, 19 home runs. Great year for Bobby Grich in 74. And they also added Paul Blair's 1974 year. 17 homers and 27 stolen bases for Mr. Blair at age 30. So Palmer, Grich, Blair, and Bob Reynolds. Baltimore's doing some smart stuff as well. Very surprising to see Baltimore even drafting this high. That's advantageous because they struggled a year ago, and so now they pick 9th in this draft, which is ridiculous. It's not even fair that they get to pick so early in the draft, but that's the way the records finished a year ago. Florida Marlins, they decided that they needed to do something clever like the other expansion teams did, like Portland did, like Toronto did, and like the Phillies did by poaching a free agent away from the Giants. Orlando Pena, a St. Louis Cardinal pitcher in the year of 73. The Cardinals added Sadakis and Reggie Smith from 73, so Orlando Pena was free to be poached as a nice reliever. He's very old. He's 39, but a heck of a year for Orlando. A 2.18 ERA. He'll team up with Tom Bergmeyer and Jose Pena to make up a nice three-headed monster in the bullpen for Florida. If their starters can make it through 6 innings, they should finish well. They also, with their other pick of 73, they acquired Felix Millan in the offseason to be their second baseman. Great glove, good bat handler, good bunt, can hit and run. 2E10 second baseman Felix Millan. California Angels just made one pick, and they took Bill Singer. And they took Bill Singer as a 20-game winner with a 3.15 ERA, joining Nolan Ryan, Frank Tanana, and Andy Hassler. Angels are going to try and do this stuff with pitching. because their hitting is pretty ordinary. Ohio expansion team got a good one, folks. They got a really good one here for this expansion team. No, I'm not kidding. This is Tom Hall, who pitched for the Cincinnati Reds in '72. Not anymore. He's pitching for the Ohio expansion team, same state. 10-1, 2.61 ERA, 124 innings. Part of that amazing Cincinnati bullpen in '72. Really one of the first years that they would talk about a bullpen glowingly when the World Series was rolling around because of Pedro Bourboin and Clay Carroll and Tom Hall. Normally, people didn't care too much about bullpens until Sparky's guys started to go to them, started to give them a lot of love in Cincinnati. So next up, the Giants. For the moment, I say for the moment, there's going to be a trade coming up. The Giants, from the year of '71, decided to double up with a couple guys. They took Sam McDowell, who they acquired in the offseason from a couple years ago for Gaylord Perry. He's 28 years old here, which seems young to me. He must have flamed out too soon. Gosh, I can't believe he's only 28. He must have started his career at 18 or 19 years old. Anyway, 214 innings, 3.40 ERA for Sam. They also took Dick Dietz, the on-base machine slugging catcher, with an 806 OPS and 19 home runs. Next up, the Tigers. Oh boy, yeah. Just one pick for them. 1973, John Hiller, magnificent year, .44 ERA and 125 innings. If I'm Detroit, I'd wear that guy's arm out. I would get him in there as many games as possible because their bullpen's not that great. You may as well just abuse him while you got him and have him get the dreaded 2-inning or 3-inning saves if you can. John Hiller on the Tigers, 125 innings out of the bullpen, 65 appearances. Next up, the Colorado Rockies. They would take perennial Rocky Rick Monday. Took his '73 season. Great defensive center, 2E9. Nice on base and slugging. 26 home runs, 92 walks, 841 OPS. Great left-handed hitting center fielder who can field. Yeah, he can't steal bases that much anymore. But he can hit left-handed pitching okay. And they also doubled up. They found another guy on waivers they liked to go to the bullpen. It's Jim Merritt, who's normally a starting pitcher. But they looked closely at the card and said, "You're just not cut out to be a starter anymore, Jim. What if we put you in the bullpen? We just want you to get lefties out." And that should make Jim Merritt more effective. He's 29 years old. He was with the Astros. No more. He's with Cincinnati and Texas for a bit as well. So Jim Merritt goes to Colorado. Next up, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Nice little pick here. 74, Jeff Zahn. A relief starter, 21 games, 10 more starts. He's really a relief starter. 79 2/3 innings, an ERA of 2.03 ERA. Arizona gets the crafty lefty. I think he was with the Cubs. He would pitch for the Twins. Would pitch for the Angels. Good candidate to go to an expansion team like Arizona. Next on the clock, as we're halfway through the second round, the Texas Rangers. Boy, they're doing fun stuff again. They're getting young. They took 24-year-old Mike Hargrove, 25-year-old Len Randall. This time, in the year '73, they would take Tom Grieve. And they're going to kind of force this for now. They're going to force him into center field because they don't have a center fielder. Sometimes you just have to do that, folks. Tom Grieve hit .309 with an 877 OPS. So I'm fine with him playing center field just to get him in the lineup. This team has too many corner first base DH types, and so they got to start pushing guys into strange positions because they got Frank Howard and Jeff Burroughs and Mike Epstein, Tom Grieve. They got a lot of those sort of slow-footed corner dudes. But again, it's the Rangers. They weren't supposed to compete in this timeline, but hey, they had 300 hitters. 323 Hargrove, 302 Randall, and 309 Tom Grieve. Next on the clock, your Pirates just keep... they're trying to get this '71 World Series taken care of. They won the 1971 World Series. They haven't won a thing for me in the carryover league. And it's time to put up here, Pittsburgh. After going for Clemente and Robertson in the first round, they've maxed out all their keepers. This time they took 72 Al Oliver. He's moved into center field, hitting .312 with a 79 OPS. And they took Manny Sanguillen, still hitting .298 with a -3 arm for Manny Sanguillen. So 4 critical members of the Pirates in this timeline are all situated. Now they got to find some young contributors in the future of 73 and 74 to help those World Series prospects. All right, the Cardinals next up on the clock. They would lose Orlando Pena, no big deal. They're happy with Reggie Smith and Sadakis in the first round. But they weren't going to risk losing another young guy, so they took Bate McBride's 74 card. They had 73 and 74 were available. They took a 74 card. They had no option for 73. Full season, 625 plate appearances for Bake. 309 as a 2 in center field, 763 OPS. Double that up with Chuck Taylor, who pitched for the Cardinals, but by this time at age 32, he's with the Expos, no more. Cardinals hang on to him. And he has a nice performance. 61 appearances, 107 innings with an ERA of .217. Chuck Taylor in the back end of the Cardinal bullpen. Smart picks for the Cardinals, trying to compete with the Reds and Pirates. Toronto Blue Jays. So, we know about Rorik Harrison in the first round, and Jerry Royce was the compensatory pick. So in the second round, they decided to cash in their off-season trade buddies. The New York Mets talked to Toronto, and they dumped their older players onto the Blue Jays. Last year, it was Tommy Agee. This year, it's Don Clendenon. And both contracts are up, so Toronto doubled up in the year of 71. 28-year-old Tommy Agee, he's got like 2 good years left. Still a 2-3 in center with a 790 OPS. Clendenon, this might be it for him. He's 35 years old, hitting .247, but he's got some power against lefties. This could be his exit from baseball after the season. So Agee and Clendenon are Blue Jays. Vegas. Oh, another clever move. This team is making some smart moves. Las Vegas. They're doing it a very unique way. In the first round, remember, they took Lomborg away as Lomborg was lost in the desert, and then he stumbled into an oasis in Las Vegas and rejuvenated his career with his Brewer performance of 1972. And then they added Ed Brinkman, who I mentioned earlier had top 10 MVP votes in 1972 with a .203 batting average, but he's a .188 at shortstop. So in this round, your Las Vegas team, they stole a free agent away from Portland. Portland maxed out the 73 cards, but with Bob Montgomery and with, what was the other guy? Let me just check again. Bob Montgomery and Bernie Carbo. Bob Montgomery and Bernie Carbo. So by maxing those 2 cards out, they found Mike Anderson as a 22-year-old free agent. He hits .254 with a 772 OPS, but he's a -1 E7 in right field. And they double up by exercising the rights on a keeper. Another former Tiger, Aurelio Rodriguez, who hits .222, but he's a 1E13 at third base. This team has added a .203 hitter, a .222 hitter, and a .254 hitter. If you think that's bad for the carryover league, it isn't. It's horrible. It's horrible for the carryover league, but folks, they're going to try and win this thing with defense. Have never seen this happen before. They're going to have Wes Parker as a 1 at first. They have Tim Cullen a 2 at second. A-Rod's a 1E13 at third. Ed Brinkman a 1E8 at short. They got a 2 in left field, Jim Nettles. They have Ken Berry, a center fielder, a 1E0 in center field, and Mike Anderson, a 1E7 in right field. This will be, I believe, the greatest defense I've ever assembled in a Strat-O-Matic league. Maybe they'll, I don't know what this team's going to do. They got to find somebody who can hit, though. You can't go through a season with 222 and 254 hitters. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with Las Vegas. They'll be a team to watch. Milwaukee. Okay, so there was a trade, folks. There was a trade. Milwaukee noticed that they did not have a left-handed starter. They let Jerry Royce get away. They have Jim Slayton in the farm system. So they made a deal with the Giants. It's a fun deal for both teams. Milwaukee sent 1971 right-handed starter Bill Parsons and keeper Jesus Alou to the Giants for Sam McDowell, who was just drafted with a 71 card, and another keeper, Don McMahon. And the Giants will get a keeper. They'll get a token out of this because McMahon is outstanding and McDowell is better than Parsons. So the Brewers have to fork up a token to do this. Giants get the token. So that helps cushion the sting of losing Gary Maddox. The Giants getting a token in a trade in this round. So what do the Milwaukee Brewers do with this? Well, pretty cool stuff actually. They go to the 74 season. Now they have a left-handed starter. They don't have to worry about that anymore. They get Robin Yount. The reason he slides out of the first round is because his stats aren't particularly good. He's 18 years old, folks. 18 years old. It's 250, 622 OPS. That's why Schmidt and Brett are first rounders. Yount will fall. All three Hall of Famers. Yount will fall into the second round. But they did get Jim Slayton to take Bill Parsons' old spot in the Milwaukee rotation with a 3.92 ERA and 250 innings. And they're going to earmark Don McMahon for their 1973, made the note there, where he's very good in 73. So they'll have McMahon and Ken Sanders at the back of their bullpen. So smart moves from Milwaukee. They still have Jim Fregosi as an option to play shortstop if Robin Yount suffers, if he's not very good. So they have that. Okay, folks, Atlanta is on the clock, and this might be the darkest moment for the National League in the draft at this point. We had said before, look, the Braves had Davey Johnson and his 43 home runs in the first round, and they have the most hideous homer-heavy offense ever assembled at Strat-O-Matic. And we said, as long as Atlanta has a lousy pitching staff, the league should be competitive. Oh my goodness, folks. Oh my goodness. In the year of 1974, the Atlanta Braves doubled up on two pitchers, two outlier pitchers who easily have the best years of their career. Tom House, a 27-year-old left-handed reliever with a 1.93 ERA and 56 innings. Oh my goodness. And it didn't stop there because after Tom House, they went to Buzz Capra, 26-year-old, 2.28 ERA and 217 innings, dominates right-handed hitters, not so much against left-handed hitters. And just when the National League thought that the Braves weren't going to get any pitchers, they landed two good ones. Oh my goodness. The Mets are getting butterflies in their stomach now. Now with Atlanta getting two quality pitchers, the Mets are going to have to get a lot more offense in case the Braves get them for crooked runs. So Braves-Mets in the National League East is going to be crazy this year, folks. Braves-Mets. All right, next up, the Minnesota Twins. Nice little pick here. They had a big hole at third base last year, filling it with Ed Crosby and I can't remember the other guy. They had Joe Haig, I don't remember. Eric Soderholm, 25-year-old, second year in the league. He's a 2.22 at third base, 741 OPS, has 10 home runs. Very solid young third baseman. Good defensively, joining Rod Carew in the infield. With Chico Cardenas, who's also 2 in the infield at short. So the Twins are in an interesting situation in the American League Midwest. All right, next up, your Cleveland Indians. They go to the year of 71 and grab a couple Indians. Ray Fosse, -3 arms still in 71 in a full season with a 276 batting average. Nice year for Ray Fosse. He's only 24 years old. And he's the same age as Eddie Leone, who is a 2.16 at second base. In the offseason, they acquired Mark Belanger to play shortstop, taking him away from the Orioles through Portland in a trade. So they got Buddy Bell at third, Eddie Leone as a 2 at second, and they have Belanger at short as a 1. Plus they got a -3 arm catcher. So Cleveland, very clever moves. Very stable moves, smart moves. Should give them a little bit of longevity. Plus, they have Gaylord Perry and Jim Perry pitching for them for next 3 or 4 years at the top of the rotation. So Cleveland's in good shape. All right, Houston. Interesting move here for Houston. They found a guy on waivers who actually was better than he was when he was in the league. It's Danny Cater. Played for Boston and the Yankees. One of those teams put him on waivers. I think the Yankees did. But you know what? In 73, old Danny hits .313. And the Astros said, we don't care about your lack of power. It's the Astrodome. None of our guys hit homers. So 33-year-old Danny Cater goes to the Stros, joining 32-year-old Jimmy Wynn, and then also 32-year-old Dennis Menke, who can play all the infield positions well. This is a great card. 191 batting average, but a 368 on base because he's got a ton of walks. On base machine and a nice utility player with good defense. Smart moves for the Astros. All right, your Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox decided to double up in the year of 1974. And ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. No balls hit to center field or right field will get into the gap. Please do not attempt to hit a ball into center field or right field in Fenway Park. It will be caught because they just acquired Dwight Evans and Rick Miller. That's right, Dwight Evans, he 1E5 -3 in right. Rick Miller 1 -2 E6 in center field. Oh, by the way, next year they're going to get some kid named Fred Lynn. So, yeah, Boston's going to have the best defensive outfield in baseball after letting Reggie Smith and those 16 errors leave in the offseason. Boston doing clever stuff. Dwight Evans and Rick Miller. Their time has come. They also have Tommy Harper if they need to get some speed into that outfield. So good moves for the Red Sox. Next up, the Dodgers. You know what? The Dodgers, they're just having fun with the draft. They're not trying to be super clever and make the perfect pick. They're just having fun. So last year they were bashed for taking Joe Ferguson and Steve Garvey when they were too young in their years 71 and 72. Their stats were pretty poor. They were like 220 hitters, 200 hitters, and they were utility players. So what they did this year, they improved Steve Garvey and made him a 1974 National League Most Valuable Player. And in this round, Joe Ferguson is a 1973 full season catcher, 585 plate appearances, -1 arm catcher, 25 home runs, and an 839 OPS. Hey, his OPS is higher than Steve Garvey, who was an MVP. So the liabilities of the Dodgers a year ago, Joe Ferguson and Steve Garvey, become two of the top hitters on their team. So, smart moves for the Dodgers. The only problem is they're going to run into the same situation they ran into a year ago. They're going to have an 18-man roster, and they're going to have 2 scrubs, like a backup shortstop and a backup catcher, or maybe a long man. They're going to find 2 guys off the street to fill the roster because they start this draft with 12 players, and they still have 12 players, while other teams have 16 players. Like Houston has 16 players. Anytime you see teams double up twice in the first 2 rounds, they don't have 16. That's not there. But here, let's see. Like these guys. The Cardinals have 16. The Pirates have 16. Dodgers have 12. So that could be costly. We'll see. It wasn't because Garvey and Ferguson did okay, and the Dodgers overachieved a year ago. So we'll see what's up with the Dodgers using that same strategy. All right, the White Sox, a tinkerer team. A picking of nits here. They decided to tinker because they want to get right back where they were a year ago, head-to-head with the Oakland A's in the League Championship Series. And they did the right thing. They did the right steps. They improved Terry Forster. He was okay with his 71 card, but they decided to bump him up to his 72 card. He's only 20 years old, but he's got a 2.25 ERA and 62 appearances. Now they have much better options at the bullpen because they acquired Jack Aker to be a closer setup guy. So they'll have Forster and Aker with ERAs around 2.5 at the back end of the White Sox bullpen to not blow games this year like a year ago. And they've added Louis Aparicio. He's 38 years old, but look, he's still a 2. Louis, at age 38, still a 2 shortstop, 2E24. And it's 257. So he anchors that White Sox infield. Smart moves by the White Sox. New York Mets. They had to try and figure some things out here between Wayne Garrett and Jerry Grody. Figuring what years to pick. 72 did not look good for either player. They eventually settled on 1973 Wayne Garrett with his most powered on base, 751 OPS. Though Mets fans will not be happy that Wayne Garrett can't field a ground ball very well at all. He's a 4.31 at third and a 4.30 at second. Ouch! That could be painful. Mets are going to need a defensive replacement for this guy in late in games so as not to let down that brilliant pitching staff. They also took their only 1973 guy in their minor league system, Harry Parker, who had cards in 73 and 74. They took his 73 card. Normally the Mets wait until the 8th round for that pitcher, 8th pitcher, but they decided to finish their pitching staff. And then they're going to move. They're most likely going to go Jerry Grody, John Milner in 74, unless something better comes along. All right, now the 2 World Series participants. Oakland. They did Bando and tennis in the first round, and in this round, they go to shortstop. Bert Campaneris, 74. Smart move here. They won him a 2, and they got him as a 2. He's a 2 finally in 74, a 2E27 shortstop. Still has the stolen bases, hits 290 with a 713 OPS. So he is fine at age 32 there. And even though they lost Bill North, a much better defensive center fielder earlier in this draft to Seattle, they selected 19-year-old Claudell Washington to play center field. Cannot field very well at all, but he does have a 285 batting average for the Oakland A's at age 19. I believe he has a nice World Series performance in here somewhere as well. So nice players for Oakland. And last but not least, it is the Cincinnati Reds, the best team in baseball, arguably the best team of the decade of the 1970s. In the first round, they took a most valuable player in 1972, player by the name of Johnny Bench. So in the second round, they decided, oh, let's take another most valuable player from 1973. And they decided on some guy named Pete Edward Rose. That's right, a Rose by any other name. 32 years old. You know, a lot of people, if you had to guess how far apart in age are Bench and Rose, would you guess 8 years? They are. Well, actually 7, because, yeah, they're 7 years apart. Bench is 24 and 72, Rose is 32 and 73, so you have to subtract a year there. Okay. Rose wins the MVP. He's not in right field anymore. He's in left field. He doesn't have that -3 arm anymore. It's a -1 arm. He doesn't have the power and speed anymore. But he won the MVP. I guess they finally decided to give him one. As a 401 OPS, and he hit 338. I think he won the batting title. Actually, maybe not. I'm thinking Ralph Garr might have won the batting title. Or maybe that's 74. I don't know. Anyway, Johnny Bench and Pete Rose, 2 the best team in the National League, your world champion Cincinnati Reds. And that is how the second round of the draft ends. And then we'll take a pause. We'll come back with third round results. Thanks for checking this out, folks. We'll see you next time.